Something important to think about in this section of the novel is why Malouf has included imagery of the effects of war on everyday life on pages 205 to 206. So, pages 205 to 211. The sun is already up and has begun to burn off the crisp white ground frost as they leave the stockade wall behind them. Little birds are twittering in the fog, which crawl so close to the ground that they seem to be setting out across a lake which stretched shoreless in all directions. The carter leans forward over the traces. Calling softly to his mules, he pulls them this way and that as their feet seek out the road. On either side, as they pass, the barrows of the dead. Ghostly figures materialize for a moment among them, then dissolve. Old men and small children are out gathering kindling, which they pile into armfuls into handcarts or lash to their backs in tottering bundles. The women are scavenging for battle relics, a silver pin, the clasp of a pair of greaves. All this part of the plain has been the scene, at one time or another, of skirmishes or pitched battles in which hundreds of men have fallen and been dragged away. The women move close to the earth, their hands turning the clods, breaking them up with practiced fingers, too absorbed in their task to care for the cart that looms up out of the fog and rumbles past them. Later, with the fog trails thinning and weak sunlight warm on their back, they pass the remains of a village, the charred stumps of an olive grove, and a dozen smoke-blackened roofless huts. Half a dozen ragged infants, big-eyed and pot-bellied, come out to stare at them. One, a little girl of 3 or 4, holds out her hand as if begging, but makes no effort to approach. They go on in silence, slowly, till the sun is high above the horizon and they are clear at last of the camp and all its outposts. Then, "Here," Priam says quietly. "Stop here." They are nowhere as far as the cart can see, in a desolate dry stretch of brush and waist-high mallow, but he pulls at the traces, calls to his mules, and they come to a halt. Priam, refusing help, climbs down, walks around to the bed of the cart, and at last lifts the coverlet from the face of his own son. The carter continues to sit, juggling the traces lightly in his hand. He gazes fixedly ahead. Off in the distance, the hills toward Troy are just beginning to develop shadows on their sides. Their crests are already touched with gold. Behind him he hears the small sounds Priam is making. They are wordless, but he understands them well enough. His thoughts go to the long night he spent, he and the boy's mother, when they brought his eldest son home, and they had sat together in the uncertain lamplight on either side of the broken body, wordless but not silent. He snuffles, rubs his nose with the back of his wrist, and pulls a little at the left-hand trace, so that Beauty turns her head, just enough for him to catch sight of her round eye, its clear glistening white. Their adventure is nearly over. In no time now, he tells himself, I will be back in my old life. And he thinks with a burst of joy of the little girl, his granddaughter, now fully recovered. How she will come running on her fat little legs to meet him when he rounds the big rock at the bottom of the hill and begins the slow climb to the village. Somewhere along the way he must find something to bring her. Then tomorrow he will go as usual with his cart and his 2 mules and wait to be hired in the marketplace. Behind him, Priam falls silent. After a little he comes round to the step of the wagon and without speaking reaches his hand up to be helped. They go on. Nothing is said. The sun grows warmer. The hot, damp smell of earth comes to their nostrils. After his moment of turmoil, Priam has settled. The air is fresh and clear. The cart rolls along at a good pace now, lighter than on the journey out. This is triumph. It is only a provisional triumph, of course. The gods are not to be trusted when they tilt the balance momentarily in your favour. And what sort of triumph is it to be bringing home the body of a son? But he has done something for which he will be remembered for as long as such stories are told. He has stepped into a space that till now was uninhabited, and found a way to fill it. not as he filled his old role as king, since all he had to do in that case was follow convention, slip his arms into the sleeves of an empty garment, and stand still, but as one for whom every gesture had still to be hit upon, every word discovered anew, to say nothing of the conviction needed to carry all to its conclusion. He has done that and is coming home, even in these last days of his life, as a man remade. "Look," he wants to shout, "I am still here, but the I is different. I come as a man of sorrow, bringing the body of my son for burial, but I come also as a hero of the deed that till now was never attempted." He does not think of this as a beginning, or not anyway of something large. How could it be? What lies ahead is the interim of the truce, a time for ordinary life to be resumed, one day then the next, no more than that can be counted on, but in his present mood it is enough. They arrive again at the slope that leads down through sycamore, figs, and holm oak to the fording place with its two channels, one milky, the other leaping clear over sunlit stones, between them the sandbanks with their clumps of flowering bay. They lurch into the stream, and the driver gets down to urge his mules through the waist-high current, then onto the gravel and humped sand of the island midstream. Back in the cart he takes them more easily through the second current, which is fast-running, but comes barely to the hooks, then up the gently sloping bank. The screen of tamarisks stirs and shimmers, but they do not stop there, and no god is lounging in the shade. They are coming home. No need this time for a guide or safe conduct. But Priam thinks with affection now of that earlier occasion, of the water, and how it cooled his feet when he sat with his robe bunched in his lap and let them soak, and of the fishlings, and how good the little griddle cakes had tasted, and of the young woman who made them, well favoured. He had a god's word for that, even if she did go limping. All this is warm in his memory, as some moment recalled from childhood, with a whole life lived between, though in fact it happened just hours ago. They are almost home now. As they emerge from the tree line that marks the course of the river, Troy, with its walls and battlements, far off, but not so far, is visible on its bluff. Tiny specks, which are swallows, weaving close circles round its towers and in larger circles in the air above it, soaring to the pure blue heavens. Riding towards it, the earth swarming and singing to the horizon, the wheels of the cart rumbling and the feet of the mules making a regular clopping sound on the road, which has by now become a highway, Priam thinks how those walls, in the days of King Laomedon, his father, had been raised to music struck from the hands of a god, and feels his homecoming now as the coming home to a state of exultant well-being in which he too is divinely led by music.